All right. Welcome back to the Evolution with Mac and Jenn podcast. It is Jen and Mac here. And today we are going to talk about the big D word,
Hmm. Yeah.
divorce.
So one of the things about talking about this is we deal with a lot of people going through it. We've both been through it ourselves, and we both come through it pretty, um, had to deal with some stuff, but because of our mindset, we came through it very well and build and continue to build on that. And it's a very, very good thing long term, but very hard thing when we're in the middle of it. So just kind of touch on a few things that some of you might be dealing with. One of the things that we see a lot is how people will be like, oh, it's an ugly divorce, or they're always pointing the finger at the other person. And the reality is, it's like, I know you're saying this person is all these bad things, but that's not always true. Like, yeah, they may have screwed up this, they may have done this, they may, but at the same time, like, as ugly as the person saying the bad stuff, like, they look just as ugly because they're saying it. So it's trying to figure out how do you manage something to get through it, to where on the other side of it you're not struggling with like kids or whatever. Now if there's no kids, it can be pretty easy. Just go your way. Like, there's no need to point fingers at the other person or do any of that stuff. So we're going to touch on that.
So I believe that I think that like society and we're programmed and conditioned to believe that divorce is supposed to be ugly, right?
Mhm.
And so I think for me, like I thought divorce was going to be ugly, and that's why people don't get divorced, or it's like it's a belief that we're told. And I just remember right before I went through my divorce, I read a blog that somebody wrote, and she said um that her and her ex have a better co-parenting relationship, or they have a better relationship now than they did when they were married. And this was in a blog that I read. And I was like, when I read that, my belief from divorce has to be ugly to divorce doesn't have to be ugly, like that's my belief right then changed. And so when I got divorced, I decided in my mind that our divorce was not going to be ugly. And I believe because I made that decision and I said, we're going to have a better co parenting relationship than we did marriage, period, end of story. And I believe because I made that decision, that's what was created. And I think that had I not like kind of declared that to myself, our divorce could have ended up very ugly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've been through one divorce, but the reality is I've been through kind of more like three. Somebody that I was committed to, my life revolved around, and then getting tore down and like to the point of like separating um assets essentially. And most all the times I was just like, it's fine. Like, I'm just gonna go through it. I don't need to hang on to stuff. Everything I've created to date, I can just recreate it. And a lot of times people get caught up in like fearing that the other person's going to take something. Women will often get caught up if there's kids, that the guy's going to try and take the kids, or that they control it, or even the story that if I let him take the kids, it's going to mean I'm a bad mom. And there's just like all this stuff that begins to happen. And the reality is when it gets ugly, it's based on the world's view, not on how you actually a lot of times feel. It's like what is being perceived by others, and what's the story like. If I feel like she talks bad about me, or he talks bad about her, or whatever, if we get in our minds and allow that to be the dominant thought, then we'll attack back, and we'll be like, oh, this person. And one of the biggest challenges about divorce is everybody needs a reason to get divorced. And often, once it begins to happen, and you begin to disconnect and realize like this isn't what's best, um, what everybody needs is a big enough reason to call the other person an asshole, and you'll create it. and so a lot of people be like, no, they're really an asshole. Jesus, like, no, they're really not. You are too, or whatever. And yeah, I mean, there are some exceptions. Obviously, if something isn't, someone has gotten to the point of physical abuse, things like that, then it's like, you kind of have to draw the line. And I've seen that stuff. Now, I mean, I even witnessed at the end of my marriage where there were instigated physical fights. Like, she was trying to get me to fight with her, and I was like, whoa, what? What? Like, there's a serious problem here that's probably going to end things, because this is not logical. And what was happening is she was looking for a big enough reason to walk away rather than just choosing out. It takes a very, very certain person, a very whole in themselves, to really look at everything and say, this is going to be painful, and I'm just going to calmly walk away and deal with all the shit that's about to happen that comes with it, with losing things, with attacks, with disruptions. It's very hard to do in that situation. Now, that was kind of more what you did,
It's
right?
it's almost like, if we want, like what you're saying is, if we really want out, typically we will create a big enough situation that gives us a reason to go.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times, actually, when I think about that, I think that's why a lot of times people will cheat.
Yeah.
Like, when I was going out on dates with a bunch of men, I would say so many of these men who were divorced told me that their wives cheated on them. And my first thought was kind of like, well, what were you not doing?
Mhm.
But then I was kind of like, it makes sense, I feel like, because when you are at the end of your relationship, a lot of times I think you will blow it up because you just want it to be over.
Yeah.
It's like, I want this to be done. What can I do? I'm just going to cheat because that's the last, usually it's the last straw. It's what ends things. So I think a lot of times we'll like unconsciously or like subconsciously choose to cheat just to end everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, or to even
To
get,
like sabotage.
well, and I think there's two sides to cheating. One is to get attention, right? Like, if the other person is not paying attention to you when you cheat, they do. Like, you'll get a lot of attention. Like, usually it's anger, rage, frustration, those types of things. But I've seen both sides of that. Um, and usually at that point, it's usually done. Like, that's a whole nother topic.
Hmm.
But it is one of the things. I mean, that's kind of what mine got blamed on, where I didn't set out on a path to cheat, but I did. It was more like something came up, didn't really think much of it, was like in the wrong place, wrong time, and shit happened. And there was like, there's a major problem here. But that was more of a wake up for me of being like, there's no way I'm living a life that I want to live if this is happening. And then I went on the path of correcting my errors, not hers. But part of that was also speaking to her in a way that said, you know what, like, what's happening in our relationship here is not going to work, because it was already obvious it wasn't, because I had already stepped out. So, like, when you get to that point, just being honest and saying, hey, I don't agree with this. Like your previous marriage, one of the big things was the drinking. It was like, you don't drink anymore, he still drinks. It doesn't fit. Like, just simply that alone is like, the decision is made, and there's an ultimatum. And at that point, it's just like, hey, okay, this isn't going to work.
I got to the point where it was like I quit drinking and he was still drinking. And because of that, like, there was just a difference in how we wanted to live our lives moving forward, how we wanted to spend our weekends moving forward. And so, like, I felt like things had to end, which is okay. It was okay for me because it was like, I felt like it doesn't make him a bad person. It doesn't make me a bad person. It just means that, like, we're no longer really aligned and going in the same direction.
Yeah.
And so it was fine. But at the end, for me, it was like there was still a lot of emotions and feelings and fears that come up around divorce, which is why, like, divorce can get really ugly because of all of the fear that the world, everybody tells you, and that gets gets in there, right?
Yeah.
And so it started to get ugly because of the way he reacted to it, but the reaction was all based out of fear.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was like, I said, no, it's not going to be ugly. And we're going to we're going to have a better co-parenting relationship than we did marriage. And so rather than me reacting to his reactions, I just kept giving him certainty and telling him the truth rather than letting him get lost in the stories of his own fears.
Yeah, it's such a interesting place to be when you have to hold like a frame that says this is what I'm going to create. And the people that don't hold those frames are the ones that go through ugly divorces. Right, like that, because you have no direction. And so when the other person does something to you, or you feel like they're taking from you, you attack them back, and then you have to justify it. And even though like I'm really good at being able to hold a frame and being able to see it and everything else, it doesn't mean that I didn't want to like destroy her, right? Because at first I'm like, hey, you want to choose another guy? Like, okay, go. Like, obviously you're not the one for me. Get out. Like, see you later. Can we be friends? Absolutely. I got no, like, it just is what it is. I'm fine with that. But when the grab started to go after my company and everything I worked for, I was like, what the hell? And then pretty soon I went from like making money to broke to now I can't afford things, and now I'm angry. Right. Like, and I'm just like, why is this happening? And it was to me like whatever. It was very hard for me to understand, and I still don't, why things took that path. Now I can look at it now and say it was a blessing.
Well, things took that path because she was trying to give herself certainty,
Yeah, and so one of the
which
things
is what
that
everyone
yeah,
does.
one of the things that I've noticed happen is when either person needs a big enough reason to leave, right? You begin to find that reason. Now hers, I gave her a reason easily. I cheated. She could see be like, no, I'm not gonna stay here, move out. And I was like, it is what it is. Like, I did do that. Like, okay, great, let's move on. Let's be adults about it. Let's figure it out. But what would continue to happen, and I see this all the time, is there would be like a conflict, and I would just give. Like, okay, like, I don't want to go to war over it. There's just no reason. It would be like a death in the family when people start to divide things and just being like, have it all. Like, I don't care. Like it's God's anyway. Like, what do I care? But the challenge with that is that when I would give, now I look like the good guy, and she still needs a reason to step out, to bail on the relationship. And the cheating apparently wasn't quite enough, right? Like, it's just I needed to be maintained as the bad guy to fully disconnect. It just is what it is now, because I look forward into the future and say there's still a way here. I'm not happy about a lot of stuff that took place. I am happy about where I'm at. So it's like, well, you choose one or the other. Okay, well, I'd rather be where I'm at. But where do I want to go? Right. So I'm focused on, maybe years, maybe months, I don't know, but some date in the future, I want to picture that we can all be family to some extent. We don't need to hang out and be lovey-dovey or anything else, but like, she can be there, her husband can be there, Jen can be there, the kids can be there, the other parents can be there, and her ex, him and I are friends. So I've already created this once, like with an ex of an ex, and like, and different things. All of my exes, well, I can talk to. I don't, but I could. They're friendly. We don't have any major things happening. Maybe some things were said. I don't care. It's like what people say about me is irrelevant. Okay, like they need to say it to give themselves space. And even as I was moving out of it, sometimes I needed to call her a bitch, right? Because I'm in pain. Now, do I want to go spread that in the world? No, not really. But I needed a little bit of permission to be angry so that I could push her away enough to go over here and solve a problem. And anger is better than depression. But what I'm going to suggest is that you don't say things and do things that are going to come back and bite you in the ass. Because if you're in the middle of a divorce and you go public and you start saying that person's a this, and this, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to fight. And then you're going to be like, well, you owe me this. And they're going to be like, shove it up your, and now you're at war. Right. So, but if you can see the picture ahead at some point and someday in time, this is all going to work out. But if I behave like a child and do a bunch of dumb stuff and say a bunch of dumb stuff and spread it out there and smear their name, that isn't going to happen. In which case, like, if you don't have kids, separate your stuff and be done and walk away. You're done. If you have kids, your number one priority should be doing everything you can to what's best for the kid. Even if they're messed up, even if you're like, they're psychologically messed up, I don't care. Like, they're probably still going to get some rights. And therefore you need to consider what you're doing in the future.
I think one thing to remember is that you and your ex are not going to agree on everything. You're not going to agree on how to parent. You're not going to agree on a lot of things. And we've talked about this before, but it's like, because if you agreed and you were aligned, you'd probably still be together.
Mm-hmm.
But just remembering, like, you're not going to agree. And sometimes I want to punch my ex in the face. True story. But like, would I ever do that? No. But do I want to sometimes? Yes. But do I just remember, like, even though I don't always agree with him and condone what he says and what he does, my biggest thing is just remembering that, like his intention is good, even though I don't always agree. If I agreed, if he agreed, if we all agreed and we were all roses, we might still be together, but we're not.
Yeah.
And we don't. So it's totally fine. Like, it wasn't just the drinking, there was some other things too that
Right.
that don't line up anymore. But it's like, so it's just remembering, like, I think we're all fighting for, a lot of times we're fighting for certainty, and we're fighting to prove our perspective. Is that, we're fighting for certainty, and we're fighting
I
for
mean, there's some significance that we fight
significance,
for,
to be right.
and also individualism, right? Like that to be right side of things, of like, I wasn't the one in the wrong doing, or whatever, because society puts a lot of pressure on people to keep up with the Joneses. And so if all of a sudden your life is being stripped down, it's hard to admit that it's your fault. Like, it's easier to blame somebody else.
Like, one thing I know that Brett was fighting for was, like, I think one of his biggest fears, and this is what society told him, what his biggest fear was that I was going to take Cameron away and he was never going to see him.
Mm.
And so Brett was reacting from that fear. And so it was coming out looking like he was wanting to argue with me and fight for certainty that he wasn't going to, quote unquote, lose his son. And once I recognized, like, what the story was, like, that he was afraid I was going to take Cameron away and he'd never see him again, and that's why he was fighting me, I just straight up told him the truth. No, Brett, I'm not taking Cameron away. Like, this is gonna work. It's gonna be okay for all of us. Like, you're still gonna see him. I'm not gonna leave. Like, I tried to give Brett certainty by giving him truth, but also following it up with, like, my actions, and, like, not leaving, and still, giving them time together and working together. And it's turned out beautifully. But he was really afraid that I was going to take Cameron away forever. And he was really reacting from that space. But once I reminded him of the truth multiple times and showed him with my actions that I'm not taking your son away forever, like he finally started to believe me, and he stopped reacting from that fear. And then we kind of smashed that story, and then we moved on to the next one, right? But it was like, once we got past the stories and the fear, that's when our relationship, I think now it's like it's a little bit more beautiful, because it's like we trust each other, and we're not coming from fear anymore. We're coming from like a space of like, even though it didn't work out, it's okay. Like, his fears are gone. And, some of the other fears were like, I'm going to take Cameron away, or I'm going to take everything from him. And again, I was like, I told him, I'm not going to take everything from you. And I think he meant like money and like his paychecks, that kind of stuff. And I was like, no, no, like I'm not doing that either. So like, I really like was intentional about listening to his fears and reminding him of the truth, and then showing him with actions. And I was able to do that because I decided we're going to have a better co-parenting relationship than we did marriage. And fight for I'm not going to fight your stories. I'm going to just remind you of the truth, show you with action, and like lead from a space of love. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And now we have something beautiful, even though we don't always agree. And like I said, sometimes I want to punch him, but I don't. But I don't react. Like it's like we don't always agree, but I just have to remind myself of certain things, like his intentions are pure, and he's one of Cameron's greatest sources of love. And like these little things that I tell myself to remind myself, like to continue coming from a place of love rather than a place of judgment. Because when we are judging, we're saying, well, you do something one way, but I would never do it that way. So that, and that's judgment energy. And when you come from that space, that's the fear, and that is this pointing the finger. So it's like, how can we let go of judgment and just learn to love each other for who each other is, knowing that the intentions are always good, even though I may not do certain things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I try to remember, like for instance, um we were at karate one time, and Cameron, I thought, did really great, but in Brett's eyes, Cameron like didn't run fast enough from one spot to the other. And so as soon as Cameron was done with karate, Brett said, I felt like he started criticizing right away. And I got upset with him for criticizing, because I was like I immediately saw Cameron's face go from excited to like torn down, and it broke my heart. And so I was upset with Brett for criticizing him, but in Brett's eyes, Brett was criticizing, yes, but Brett was doing it from a place of, I'm just trying to help him be better.
Mhm.
And so I was judging, saying, well, I wouldn't do it that way. And, you shouldn't do that. But in Brett's eyes, Brett was doing the best that he could in the moment, with the intention of, I'm not trying to hurt my son. I'm trying to help him be better. And so it's like just remembering, like we don't always do things the same, or react the same, or parent the same, or whatever, but like trying to see how the intention is pure, and like appreciating that.
Yeah. There's you the reality is, it's like how the other person parents, it's not your business. Like if you're getting a divorce, it is what it is. I'm going to back up a little bit to like, once, like let's say you're in a situation where it's not working, one of the people in the relationship say, I want a divorce, this is done. First thing is realizing that for the other person to get to that point, you're fucked. Okay, like that doesn't just happen. There's a backstory, there's a lot going on, like there's so much that you're not going to reverse that by fighting.
Well, I found it very interesting that like when I told Brett that I wanted a divorce,
Mhm.
he reacted in a way that where he felt so blindsided. Like he felt blindsided, I think. But it's interesting because by the time I got to the place where I wanted a divorce, like I had already grieved our relationship, like my anger was done, like I was done. And I feel like for years before I actually got to the place where I was like, I want a divorce, I feel like I um told him how unhappy I was multiple times. But I feel like he either wasn't listening or looking back, I think perhaps my delivery, I wasn't communicating truly what I needed or how unhappy I was and what I needed, you know, it just got to a point where it was like I felt like he wasn't listening and then I was just done. But he acted blindsided and I was blindsided and I was like, seriously? Like I've been I've been so unhappy for years. Like how are you blindsided here? Like how do you not
Yeah.
know? How did you not know this was not coming? Like
But the reality was is the door was already shut, right? Like the feelings had been felt, the emotions had been dealt with, everything else, and this is like, no, I'm getting a divorce. Like for her, the door was already shut. There was no recovering that. Period. Like to just, it's impossible. The only recovery to that situation would have been like if in that moment he like woke up, quit drinking, completely changed his life, dove into personal development, maybe a year after that, which would be near impossible for a man to be dealing with that much pressure, that much thoughts, like fear, just losing everything to get that aligned. We don't, as human beings, we don't work that way. We go into depression and frustration and things like that. um so and I was once in that position where a girlfriend told me things have to change. It was probably a little too late at that point, but I would say it was. I mean, I don't think we were right, but at that point, I heard what was really being said, and I went, "Oh shit!" And then I dove into personal development, and over the next year, corrected myself, but it still wasn't what she was apparently looking for. So, but I typically see it coming, and but for everybody else, it's like, okay, whatever. But let me back up to go to the point of, once somebody makes a decision, you, you, you at that point, the best thing you could do is honor it. Like you have to wake up real fast and say, shit, it is what it is, right? Like, I mean, it's just, at this point, it is what it is. You're screwed. And you like, don't try to fight, don't try to blame, do anything. Create the picture in your mind of where you want to wind up. Like right there, picture in my mind of where I want to wind up. Now, I've seen a lot of women try to turn the guy into a controlling, abusive asshole, right? Or he's aggressive, or I've even seen women instigate to the point of getting physical, and like whether it's bruised from grabbing them or certain things, or like chaos with kids, like this is very common. And then on the way out, they're like, I need to justify this, so they begin to make the guy into this animal, right? And this animal exists because of the woman, right? Like there's a co-creation of this, because when you remove her from the picture, he's normal. But they're going to be like, he's a beast, he's a this, he's a that, and like all this energy, and try to take the kids. And they try to take the kids because, well, they got to be a good mom, and a good mom couldn't say all these things about this guy and then allow the kids to stay there, so now she needs custody. When the reality is, if she just removes herself as the problem and says, this isn't good, I'm just going to choose different, I'm going to go find and live a life that I want, we'll be fine. Then none of that needs to happen. And like 99% of the time, if you just remove one of the people from the place, then they become normal people. Now, understandably, they both put themselves there and they both need to do some work so they don't recreate it. But That's the reality. So let's say you're in the middle of this, you're thinking about a divorce, or you're in the middle of a divorce or whatever, and you think the other person is absolutely evil and the problem and everything else. The question is, were they that way when you met them? And are you the common denominator of the problem? And that's a hard pill to swallow. Okay, like um my my relationship, I mean, she tried to do some crazy stuff to like get out, and it was like, this is insane, and kind of saw that with a lot of different things. But the reality is, it's like we were fighting. You can't fight by yourself. You know, it's like there were conflicts, there were scenes. I began holding a different standard in the relationship. Like, I changed the rules, and eventually she agreed for a while, and we made a lot of progress. But then eventually she disagreed, and it was like, okay, moving on. I'm gonna go find what I want. Now in my mind, I went, well, if she's not the one, then I'm gonna get something better, like far better than I've ever had, because I'm better. I'm gonna keep working on getting better. I'm gonna create something that looks better. I'm gonna and honestly, there's like 3 or 4 things that I really, really want. Right. I want me to be super happy. I want to find the person that's perfect for me. I want her to find her happiness, and like, if it's good for her, that this crazy that I'm seeing never comes up again. Right. Like, I would prefer to see that. Right. Like, let's just, I want her to be happy. Third is, I want my kids to be happy. Right. Fourth, I want us all to be in the same room to be able to be happy. Okay. Like, ultimately, that, like, if that could happen, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want that. I just, it doesn't make any sense. And unless you're seeking so much significance that you feel like something was taken from you, which means you're discontent with your own situation and you need to go fix your own shit. Because I don't care who you are. And when you work on yourself, no matter how much chaos and destruction they bring on you, that you think they bring on you, no matter what it is, if you get through it and get to the other side of it, you'll be the happiest person ever. Right. You'll just have this peace about you. You won't care about the past. None of it matters. It's all good. It's all fine. It was all for a good reason or whatever. And it helps you grow and become better. So when you look at it, if you're in the mess, everything else, let your mind go where it needs to go. Like, what do you want to create? And if you just cannot stand the person, the one thing you don't want to do is attempt to destroy them, because that's negativity that gets in you. You need to just focus on, like, no, I don't want anything to do with them ever again, but I need to focus on me. Now, when it comes to kids, God made you both parents, not a judge. Okay. So where's the authority lie? You're both parents. It should be a 50-50 split. And unless it's literally like the one person is like maybe complete alcoholic coming home every night and beating the shit out of the kids, then you have to deal with that. You still might be the cause and the problem of it or something. I don't know, but that's not an acceptable situation where you have to be like, hey, if it, like, I got to take the kids until this happens. And it could be the mom that's doing the same thing. She's a closet drunk, being aggressive and abusive to the kids. It's like, no, you either change this behavior, I'm taking the kids. And that's a different type of a fight. But I'm telling you, like 95% of the time, that is not what we're talking about. There are some messed up behaviors that will happen, but when you remove one of the people as the problem, both people become decent parents, and they at least love the kids, even though, like what she was saying, where Brett was being critical and she disagrees with how that works, because she's a mom, obviously. Right. Guys are going to be more aggressive and moms are going to be more loving. That's a common thing. But it's like, let him be him, you be you. And also, as parents, we have to accept that we're all going to screw up. And then we get a second chance and then another chance.
I feel like for both Brett and I too, like, since we do 50-50, and so I only see my son 50% of the time, and so does he. I think both of us have become better parents in the process, because we both are more intentional now with the time that we have. So, that changes things too, because, if dad doesn't, normally he's not very attentive or doesn't do a lot for the kids, if he's on his own now and has the kids 50% of the time, he's going to have to step it up a little bit and be more intentional about it. And then the weeks that you don't have the kids, then on those weeks you do your own thing. And then so kind of like, I don't know, I feel like both of us became more intentional and actually like better because rather than a lot of times I think when we're like in the motions of it, like we can, if we have our kids all the time, we tend to be more snappy with them or ignore them more, we're on our phones more or whatever, where when you only get them half the time, you're more likely to put your phone down or to give them a little bit more presence. And I think the kids will remember like you being present and like appreciating that rather than if you had them all the time and you just kind of like ignored them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
there's, that might even be a good reference for people that are married, right? Like maybe you should gamify it a little bit to be like, okay, this week you plan everything for the kids. This week you get to pay attention to the kids and talk to them after school and everything else. And then next week, and give the other person some space. And what you'll find is all of a sudden you're not getting the attention. And then you want the attention. So then you're like looking forward to your time with them. And then the other person gets it. It's like, oh, well, but you're having to coexist in the same place, but it creates some fun and excitement to it and change it up and make it continue to feed into the kid, or kids.
maybe there would be less divorces if we were all a little bit more intentional with our time.
Yeah, for sure. And also all focused on growth, right? Like to be willing to say, hey, like I spent the first however many years of my life growing like crazy. And then I hit somewhere around 16 to 20 and nothing has really changed. Like the reality is my mindset still kind of where like a lot of people exist inside that frame. Like their mindset really doesn't shift that much. They're not progressively growing. And then all of a sudden one person decides that they're painful enough that they change. And then the other person's going, what are you doing? And it becomes disruptive. So like both people need to be focused on some level of growth. And it's also a command from God, like multiply your talents. That means your gifts of communication, your gifts of everything. So when you're going through the kind of looking at this idea of how do you create something that's peaceful, don't go through this without considering that God made you both parents. God gave you both authority. Look at the statistics on like kids without dads, like how much more likely they are to wind up in jail. Like a single father raises a kid, not very likely to go in jail. A mother raises kids, they're way more likely. Like moms, you have to honor the discipline the dads bring, even though you don't like it. And dads, you have to honor that she's going to call you an asshole because she's the lover, right? Like it's just, like let them be them. That's what the kids need. Different things like her son Cameron isn't going to talk to me or Brett about certain things. He's not, but he'll probably talk to mom about just about anything. That's a blessing, and that's because she's a lover, right? Like
I think it's remembering too that everybody's doing the best that they can, and also remembering too like that even though sometimes we think dad is an asshole, like our kids still love both of their parents. Yeah. And so whether you agree or like or not, your kids love their mom and your kids love their dad, and your kids, deserve to have all the love in their lives.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I care about the kids. Like I'll put the kids before everything, but I won't put your stories about the kids before everything.
If everybody's fighting for the kids, I just say like, wow, how lucky are your kids to have so many people that love them that y'all are fighting for them.
Yeah. But do your best not to be the shit talker in the room, spreading the rumors and everything else that you're going to pay for later. You know, the other person might be on the other side of thinking to themselves, you know what, I still like, I love this person and I just really want them to be happy. I'm really, like this is what they're doing at night when they're alone all of a sudden, and they used to have a home and a family and now they have nothing, and they're like, this is so hard. Why is this happening? They're like, yeah, but really I just want them to be happy. I want the kids to be happy. And they're thinking these things. And then they get online and you're calling them an asshole. What do you think is going to happen? It's not going to be pretty. But if that other person's trying to give, and they go online and they see you saying, this is, and I'm not saying it needs to be online. I'm just giving a reference to this, but they see like, it's a really hard thing to be doing this, but I just, I wish everybody the best. And, and that becomes communicated of like, this is hard, but I still want everybody to win to the best that could be won. And they're thinking this in their mind, and then they hear that and they're like,
And
yeah,
if you show up consistently in that energy, you will create that a more peaceful life. I promise
yeah.
you.
And apologies go a long ways. Like
I
even if
said
you do,
the energy that you bring is the energy of. And sometimes it takes a while because your ex may have a lot of fear and a lot of stories in their head because of what they're being conditioned and programmed and all the things. But it's like as long as you keep showing up in the energy of what you want to create, eventually you will get there. I know it.
yeah, and don't be conditional, because like when you're like, I've seen this a lot. Well, I would do this if he did that, or I would do this if she did that. Like that's conditional. It's his business, it's her business.
And judgment. If you want to be happy, you just got to let go of the judgment.
Yeah,
You're calling him an asshole because you're judging him. You're
yeah.
judging him because you think, your way would be better.
And like the command is don't judge. When you judge somebody else, I mean, imagine that you're standing in front of Jesus. What do you think he's going to do? He's not going to look at them. You'd be like, oh, look what he's doing. He'd be like, no, look what you're doing.
And even if you're judging and he's not doing things in the way that you think that he should, maybe the way he's doing things is what the kids need for their own growth. I don't
Possibly.
know.
Yeah.
But it's like there's, if you believe in God, God has a purpose and a plan. And sometimes it doesn't always look the way we think it should, but a lot of times things happen and it's what was needed for us all to grow. Like, so,
Yeah, I could bitch about my parents screwing all this stuff up and everything else, but then that would change. Like if I were to change that, that would change who I am.
mhm.
And a lot of those crazy things that happened, are like, I mean, I understand them, I can see things, I also understand me because of it and everything else, but it made me who I am. I wouldn't change that. So don't make assumptions of what has to happen. Like, all, you don't. Like God does. Leave it to him. Set your sight on what you want to create. Be willing to be wrong. Like be willing to apologize. Like if you blow up and lose it and you lost it, you went over the top, go calm down and send a text back being like, hey, this is just hard. That was too much. I apologize. And then just ignore whatever comes after that, because you created it. Like just, it doesn't matter. So no matter where you're at in this process, you can, if you decide on the outcome you want to create, you can. I don't care how crazy you think the other person is, but there's one thing you can't do is control the timeline. Okay. It's like I figured everything would be great with my ex, as far as like, hey, we're both personal development people. Everything should be fine. We'll figure this out. 3 weeks in, it was all great. We all got along. I supported them. They supported me. And all of a sudden, boom, it blew up. Right. Like it, and just destroyed everything. And like then I rebuild one thing and get back in touch with they're my stepkids, but get in touch with them, and then all of a sudden they quit talking to me, and I haven't talked to the ex in over a year. Like I don't know what's going on. And then she comes up, talks to me, and we have a peaceful, a good, positive exchange. It was like, okay, well, this is looking more getting there. However, it could blow up tomorrow. It could completely blow up tomorrow. It could even blow up based on some shit that I said because I was angry.
And even if it quote unquote blows up,
Doesn't mean it doesn't get there.
it the blow up could be it if you look at it as a bad thing, or it could be a good thing, like you never know, right? And so like
I see it as a good thing.
again, if you're like in the middle of the blow up and you're upset with the way reality is, you're judging reality, and so that's again why you're upset, because you're in like that energy of judgment, right? But it's like, how is this working for me? What can I learn from this? What can I appreciate from this? Like, seeing the good in it, it's hard sometimes, but it's like, but again, like there's always a bigger plan, and sometimes God doesn't read the fine print on how you want things to work out for you, right? But eventually it always does.
Yeah, and that's one thing where I'm very, very confident in what begins to play out and how things work, that it's like God's hand is in this. Like, I don't need to control it. There's pieces playing out, and I can kind of see it, but I don't understand it. And so I just sit back and be like, no, like I don't think any of it's a bad thing.
I
Like,
feel like a lot of what has happened that could be perceived as bad, like them pulling away or doing certain things, has brought us like maybe closer
yeah,
together.
like maybe that's why. Maybe it's like, hey, get this cut off here so that we can be better, right? Like, possibly. It could be that they need to learn something. Could mean that she needs to learn something. Like, I don't really care that much. I'm still focused on what I'd like to create. That like, especially around Christmas times or whatever, where like if we were all in the same place, we could literally, like, all the mixtures of families and everything could be in the same place, and everybody be completely at peace with it, be happy for each other. Some form of that doesn't need to happen. Like, it's not like I'm trying to force it to happen, but I'm saying, like, if it did, everyone would be like happy for each other.
And if your behaviors didn't align with what you want, you're never going to get what you want.
No.
So the way that you're showing up in all of this, I believe, is putting you on the path where that could happen.
Yeah, and same with your ex and his family and everything else. There's things that we can see that are happening that could play out to where it's like, no, this is all going to be very good.
Yeah,
And
I see it.
yep. But just for those of you that are kind of thinking, yeah, I don't think so, you don't understand, you don't know my ex, you don't know my person or whatever, or what my situation or whatever it is.
I know your ex has a lot of fear and a lot of stories in their head, and if what you want is to create something different with them, you just need to start showing up with the energy of like giving them the truth, less judgment, and just leading with love. And I believe like that's how things start to shift. And this could happen in your marriage too, or divorce or whatever, but it's like, just start seeing the truth, not reacting from the stories in your head. If you believe they're an asshole and they're out to get you, you're also in fear.
Yeah, and you also don't know that, so you're kind of being an asshole yourself. Like, there's certain things that I could say about my ex in the past, but I haven't really been around her for a year and a half, so for me to continue saying those things would actually be a lie. So it's kind of like, well, the behavior was this, but I don't know now that she's like she's showing up different in a different relationship, and then her new husband is different to her, and maybe they're perfect, and so maybe so I'm not going to continue saying this is who she is, because I don't actually know.
It's not. She's not a bitch, and you're not an asshole. She's just done bitch things, and
Yeah, I mean, and I've done asshole
and
things,
you've done asshole
like,
things, but you are not an asshole. And I'm not saying you, I'm saying like you, everybody, like your ex-husband, your husband. He is not an asshole. He just assholes sometimes.
yeah, acts, right? Like, you act like a dick, or you act like a bitch, or you
I'm
act.
not a bitch, but I can pull it out if you want me to.
Yeah.
I
So
practiced it before.
take a breath, let it go, think about what you want, understand that you are going to have to take responsibility for this regardless of the situation. If you continue to blame, you're not taking responsibility of it. Stop blaming, start doing, get your life whole where you want it to be. Take the time, could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We don't know. It depends on where you're at. Luckily, because I've been through this quite a bit, I was able to move pretty quickly through the emotional struggle of it. You spent a couple of years kind of looking and finding and
It's really hard. It's really hard to like see the other person through a lens of love because like you don't want to. And I feel like this is why I tell people sometimes if I really wanted to, like I could be happy in a relationship with Brett because of how I see things so different now and where I've stopped judging him so much.
mm,
um and so like but when you can get to that place it's really cool and then you just get to decide like even though I think I could have a relationship with him and be happy, the question is like do I want to, and the answer is no because again we're not aligned.
mm,
But when you let go of the judgment of the other person, then life really does become more peaceful because it's like we just stop judging, we start appreciating, and then just saying like I appreciate you but are you right for me or are you not. And then the question, and then that's where you get to decide if you know, which is why you're getting divorced because they're not right for you.
yeah,
And it's okay because we grew but we didn't grow together, we grew apart. I
yeah,
don't know. So
yeah. These days, it just is what it is. So I don't want to go into it off on another subject with there, but
I feel like we can go like there's a lot just to
there is a
touch
lot.
here if there's, you know, if you're going through it or if you're thinking about it or whatever. But I think the main thing is just figuring out like what do you want, how do you want to feel every day, and what is life, you know, what do you want in life, right? And then just start creating that, and just understanding that we're all human, we're all doing our best. We're all learning this together, and it's not always easy, but it's like, you know, how can we support each other and know like it's hard. We're all afraid. We all want to be loved. We all want that certainty and you know, but it's like even though we you know it didn't work out between us, like still seeing each other as people with feelings and souls and fears, and you know it's like how can we support each other through it. I don't know.
Yeah, and one last thing, and then
Yeah, give us a last
we're
thing.
done. Um, when you're going through this, and it's emotionally hard, and you're struggling, and you begin talking or connecting with other people that are going to support you, I would send a very, very strong caution to do not go to people that are losers, that have also had bad divorces, that have also like they don't even have a relationship, because typically that people will run to the closest, easiest person to talk to, and that person is often just as broken as they are.
Most of the time if you're going to people like that and you're calling your husband an asshole, they're gonna
And
validate and they're gonna be like, oh yeah, he is an asshole, da, 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 da.
yeah,
You know,
you have
he's
to
an
do
ass.
this.
Where I would
You
say,
got to
you know,
protect
maybe
yourself.
maybe he's not an asshole. Maybe he just doesn't know how to love you how you want to be loved.
Yeah, and most of the time, if people say that, it's like maybe you don't know how to communicate your emotions to him or her correctly.
But when you go to your sister, your Aunt Sally, and your mom, they're all gonna validate you and say, "Oh yeah, he's a fucking asshole. You should dump him. Da, 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 da.
And then
How could he do
tell
that?"
you how to fight him.
Yeah, how to fight him, how to gain certainty, because that's what everybody wants. You know, well, you need to do this now and get those lawyers and da da da, and he's gonna try to take the kids, and it's like, no, 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 no. Oh, that's gonna happen if you create it. And typically, when you are pecking with the other chickens in a sense where it's like y'all are hating, it's like you are going to create the energy of fear and hate and anger. And so, you know, find somebody with who's unbiased
You
and
hire somebody like us. period. Like there's this isn't a, oh, I'm gonna go talk to the person that has the perfect relationship.
Who
Okay.
can help you
Like, no.
create what you actually truly want rather than the other people who will give you more fear to react from. Because if you are leading with fear and they're all pumping fear, everybody's afraid, you are going to live a life and create situations all from a place of fear, which is going to come out
Mm.
looking like anger, fighting, judgment, yelling. That's what fear looks like. And that's what most of the world creates from. And you don't want that because you're different.
Yeah, so there's an authority of like where you seek counsel. First is God. That should be your first access. And then from there, it's like somebody that has what you want. So you have an objective of like, this is where I'd like to wind up. And I'm not talking about like that he gets kicked in the balls 70 times and you get everything. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like 10 years from now, that your kids are whole, you're happy, they're happy, all the problems are fixed, you're moving on, whatever. Like that's what I'm talking about. And so what you're going to do is you're going to look for somebody that can actually, that has done that has kind of been in a similar situation and then created that and actually willing to help. And but they have this ability to actually create this. Those are the people you go to. So like if you're in this place of like, I don't know what to do, or I think he's an asshole, no, you're wrong, or whatever. It's like, really, get on the phone with me. Let's talk. Let's figure out, have like, I'll give you a free consultation to see what is actually happening right there, to be like, this is, like, because I'll call it out instantly. Now you'll probably hate me. Okay. Like let's just be honest. But at the end of the day, you'll love it because you'll wind up creating something that is far less painful, that gets you what you want, just like extremely faster. Like even if you have to pay, it's going to save you a shit ton of money, like in the end. And let me give you a reference. When I was getting divorced, my company was getting torn apart, and everybody told me, you need to get a lawyer, you need to do this, you need to do that. And so I was like, so I talked to one, and then I thought about it, and I was like, no, I don't want to fight. Like there's if I start this war, it means I will be in the middle of a divorce next year, possibly the year after that. So I will spend the next 2 years at war and my life not moving forward. Fuck that. I'm done. Like if they so much as put up any fight at all or it gets ugly, I'm just going to sign it over. I don't care. I don't care. I'm going to give them all the information I have. I'm going to show them all my cards, everything. And I just don't care. And that's kind of what happened. They started accusing me of stuff that was, I laughed in their face. I was like, I would love to actually take this to court. Like, I would love to just like ram this up your ass type of thing. I was like, but like, you guys are acting like snakes. I'm out. Like, signed over. Bye. See ya. And that was probably, I don't know, had we met by then? I don't. So it was like pretty quick right there in the beginning, but because I released that,
I think you had already done that.
yeah. So because I had just let it go, released it. Guess what? My emotions, my energy, wide open, at peace, whole, moving forward. Date set on divorce. Everything else. Conversation starts right here. Had I not done that today, I would still be at war. I would still be fighting. I'd be dark. I would be miserable. I would be in debt. I like all this bad shit. I'd probably be blamed for everything happening this way, right? Like for the destruction. Instead, I gave it away. Then she wrecked it. Now it's on her. Like, not my problem. My problem was some other stuff I had to correct. But the better it gets, the more happier I am, the more I want her to be happy. I don't really care. God's blessed me beyond belief. Like the whole process of this process, the whole process of that old relationship was, I got to become the person I wanted to be. Like, it was a growth for me, massive, becoming the man I want to be, so that I could be with her and serve, and like we could connect and be one in this way. It's like freaking amazing. So like, why would I be angry? Like, it just doesn't make sense anymore. No, understandably, when you're going through it, like, you get angry and it's just like, okay, just okay, be angry, but don't be destructive. Try not to go public and be destructive or do these different things. So if you find yourself in this stupidity of what it is, that's just what it is, we all do it, then find somebody that can actually support you. Find the person with reason that's going to be like, no, don't do that. No, you think that, but that isn't true. You need to look at it this way. Consider this, do this. Like it's not a fun conversation, but it's a winning conversation. At the end of the day, it's how you set yourself up to win. It's how you set your kids up to win. It's a different kind of authority, and God is the ultimate power in those conversations. And if God is not the ultimate power in those conversations, you're not talking to the right person. So stop gossiping, stop bitching, stop doing everything, and say, I get to move forward with my life in a better way, and so will they whenever their time comes. Leave it up to them. All right. So we'll stop there, because we've said a lot and we could say a lot more, but have the vision of where you want to go and find the right person that can help get you there. Anything else?
Amen.
All right. We'll see you guys on the next one.